The latest on a potential Brock Purdy extension in the 2025 offseason. We got updates from Tim Kawakami last week. Now we got an update from Diana Rossini there. And what about Myles Garrett? What about Kupp? What about the trade market? Could the 49ers throw some people on the trade market as well this offseason? Buckle up. It's going to be a good one on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you as always at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Very special guest on today's episode I will introduce momentarily. I do want to thank everybody first for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play just $5. And now let's bring on today's guest.
Nicholas Winkler, come on down.
Wink, what's happening, my man? We got to get your official Super Bowl predictions before this episode is over, so don't let me forget about that. But we got to get your thoughts on Myles Garrett. Cooper Kupp is now on the trade block. Don't think the Rams want to send him the 49ers direction. I don't think the 49ers are in the market for an extra wide receiver right now on the trade market, but could they put one on the trade market? But first, let's get to the Brock Purdy stuff, guys, because that is obviously objective number one now. Niners fixed their coordinator stuff. They got Robert Saleh in. They got a special teams coordinator now. So Brock Purdy extension is front and center here, and it will be the biggest story for the 49ers post Super Bowl 59 until that deal is struck. I want to go back to last week because it kind of went under the radar. And Tim Kawakami said that he heard from plugged-in NFL source last week that the 49ers in Purdy's camp are indeed feeling like there won't be fireworks on the way to an eventual deal. But Kawakami has also heard generally that the framework might be a little different than some other recent quarterback deals. He suspects that this means the 49ers could be pitching a shorter-term, lesser guarantee deal compared to the full-time commitment deals signed by Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, and others over the last few years. Will Purdy and his agent be happy with that? Assuredly, there will be some negotiations. Nobody makes their best offer right off the bat. It might take time. And when I read that from Tim Kawakami, guys, I said, okay, plugged-in NFL source says that they're indeed feeling like there won't be fireworks, but then that the 49ers are going to lowball them with a short-term deal with no guarantees, and that it might take time. So it's like, which is it? I was more confused after reading that than before because it started out great. And it was like, oh, yeah, they're going to get close and maybe not trying to break the bank and they'll do some unconventional things and they'll come together with the deal. And then it started to sound more and more like what it would sound like to have a long, extended, blown out negotiation, right? Am I going crazy on that? Because I don't know how Brock Purdy's agent would be like, oh, cool, shorter with less money. That's exactly what we're looking for. Let's do that deal as early as possible, right? That doesn't seem like any of that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I feel like that's what I've wanted all along is I've been saying, 2 years, 100 million, even 2 years, 120 million seems to me like I'd much rather have that than like a 7-year, right? Where he's paying an average of $55 or $60 million a year because of the injury history. And of course, because he didn't have the best year. I know a lot of his weapons were injured all year long, but I saw a really great tweet earlier, or X or whatever they call him now, from this guy. He was talking about, the Niners only won 6 games this year. I think you need to make sure that, Purdy plays out his rookie contract and then maybe we sign him to $60 million a year. It was by a guy named @Crocky209. I don't know if you follow him or not. He had his finger on the pulse, I think, right there, what most fans want to see.
We talked a lot about this. I got to make it clear. I like Purdy. And the question is just how much, right? And I think when he's had all of his guys or most of the guys, he's done a terrific job. Now, the biggest argument throughout that time was, well, there are a lot of quarterbacks that would be good in that situation. And some people wanted to, point to guys like C.J. Beathard or Nick Mullins. And it's like, well, we're not talking about backups or third-string quarterbacks or journeyman quarterbacks. We're talking about starting NFL quarterbacks. If you have to have a starting NFL quarterback and he's worth any kind of a damn, how would he do in that situation? And I think what we saw from even like Sam Darnold this year, hey, man, you put a quarterback in a terrific situation like that, he could play some football and you can win 14 games. Now, they didn't go to the Super Bowl like the 49ers did, but it just went to show, like, you'd have a certain level of opportunities if everything around the quarterback is great. But more times than not, we know that's not realistic. Sam Darnold, he may have just played on the best team that he'll ever play on, or at least start for an extended period of time. More times than not, you're quarterbacking a team that looks more like the 49ers look this season. And the reason why it just makes me a little uncomfortable paying a ton of money is because I just would have liked to see more than 6 wins. I would have liked to see more wins than the 2017 49ers when they didn't even really have a roster. I would have liked to see more wins than the 2020 team when you're missing George Kittle for an entire season. There was no CMC even thought of as a 49er. Deebo Samuel was hurt. There were a lot of injuries on both sides of the ball, Sherman and all those guys. So, okay, that team won 6 games. So if you're Brock Purdy and you're going to be expected to make a ton of money, well, if I put you in a great situation and you play great, awesome. But if you're in a less than ideal situation and my results are the same as Jimmy Garoppolo playing 6 games in the season and Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard over a course of a season, then why would I pay you a ton of money? And that's just so I would ideally like to see him play out this fourth year, which I don't foresee happening. If I'm Brock Purdy, and that's what I kind of led with, if I'm Brock and I'm his agent, I'm his camp, I'm paying me $60+ million per year, or I'm not playing under that. Now, who holds the cards in that situation? Is it like, well, the 49ers don't have leverage or Brock doesn't have leverage? I don't know. But I know just going into it, what my head would be if I were Brock or I was his agent, I would not want my quarterback playing for $60 million a year. It would have to be, for anything less than $60 million per year. It would have to be it would have to be a legit extension. So I guess that's the biggest part. If you are Brock and you're in his camp, Nick, and we'll go to you. What do you think is the right way to go about this if the 49ers do indeed try to lowball him?
Yeah, I think they will. I think that obviously, like you said, both kind of start at a place and you try to meet in the middle. And I think the 49ers first come at him with, hey, you want to do something long-term? Okay, we'll do long-term at $45 million a year. You want to lock up 7 or 8 years? Let's do it at that. Or we can go this other route where it's 2 years, $55 million. Like, what do you think about that? Like, I think they're going to kind of come at it from a different couple of angles, because it's like, do you want to get paid more overall, more guaranteed money, more upfront money? Like, how much are we talking signing bonus? Because you're talking about a guy that didn't even make $1 million last year, right? You're talking about a guy that it was one of the lowest paid football players in the NFL. And now he's about to get paid. So he's going to want some money up front, obviously, as he has deserved it, right? He's earned that money. So if you're the 49ers, do you try to lowball him with long-term and be like, okay, or short-term bunch of money? Me personally, I'd rather go short-term with it, because you don't want to get locked in to an 8 or 9 year deal. I'm going to keep going back to this same bit that I've talked about a lot on this show, and it's one of my key sticking points when it comes to really paying a quarterback. 6 of the top 8 quarterbacks did not make the playoffs last year. That just doesn't add up to me. You can't pay these guys.
Who do you know?
Like Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, it's Joe Burrow. A bunch of guys like that some of them are on good teams, and they still weren't able to build enough around them because they're probably paying these guys such a huge percentage of that salary cap money that they have to settle for less in other places. And I feel like that takes a big hit to the whole franchise when you have to do that. And I don't want to see the 49ers do that.
Well, that's the conversation that people have with the market. And I think Brian Peacock, he was out in front of this saying, well, how do we know what the market is if no one ever tests the market? Every time a quarterback signs, it's a team bidding against themselves and driving the price up within negotiations, as opposed to saying, well, let's go out there and see what you're really worth and what somebody's really willing to pay you. You look at the Brandon Ayuk situation. I think the 49ers and Brandon, it wasn't the most ideal situation to put a guy in at that point in the offseason or starting the season. And even then, there were teams that were like, well, we'll pay you $30 million a year, right? I didn't think anybody would, because, well, why would you? Teams Their roster is set, or you have the free agency that starts in March or whatever, middle of March. You have free agency, and then the next month you have the NFL draft. After the draft, if you wanted a receiver or anything else, well, you address that in the draft and free agency. So come training camp, your roster is pretty much set. Now, there may be a team or two who are like, well, maybe we didn't address it the way we would have liked to, but I think that limited a lot of people that would be interested in in getting Brandon Ayuk services, or that would be able to, in that moment, pay him what he's able to with the draft capital that you'll potentially have to trade for him as well. So there are all these different things. And even then, at the very least, the 49ers still were able to find out what is Brandon Ayuk's market, like a real market. Because there were teams, even in whether he wanted to go there or not, you found out what teams will be willing to pay Brandon Ayuk. And I think for Brock and Tua and Dak Prescott, some of these other quarterbacks who, they're solid, they're cool quarterbacks. But man, are they the guys that you feel comfortable paying $55-60 million a year for? And when you see how it's played out, I think the answer is no. I'm not saying Brock is those guys, but I probably would have been a lot more comfortable if they would have won more than 6 games this year.
A lot more thoughts on the Brock Purdy potential extension, what that could look like. Some new info from Diana Rossini, NFL insider, about how this negotiation could go next. This episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Game Time and the Game Time app. Looking for tickets for your next big event? Maybe last-minute tickets to the big game this week? Whether it's a concert, a comedy show, a sports event of any type, find the tickets at the right price. The right ticket, the right price, and without any of the headaches with normal ticket buying processes. Game Time picks, as well as the newest feature at Game Time. It's never been easier to find those tickets for big sporting events, especially those with a ton of tickets and a ton of seats, so you don't have to filter through it. Game Time picks does the work for you. The app does all the hard work, curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. And the best part, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. So if you're anybody that goes to concerts or sporting events or comedy shows, really ever, you should already have the Game Time app downloaded. You can get some phenomenal last-minute deals at Game Time. So always check Game Time before you go to an event. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So the big idea as it pertains to the Brock Purdy contract for me, guys, and by the way, welcome back, everybody. For everybody out there listening and watching, that was instantaneous. For us, we had a little technical difficulties and took a little bit of break. You might have noticed, you might have not, but I think I wasn't wearing a hat earlier. And when it comes to Brock Purdy, something you said, Wink, which is pretty important to me. And like, I don't know what the number ends up being, the years, like you the longer the contract, the probably easier it is to spread out, right? And so it's probably easier on the cap if it's a longer deal, and then they're going to throw a bunch of void years too, and you can really massage the cap, and you can structure away some things and lighten the load throughout the entirety of the deal. But the idea, whether it's a short-term deal, if that makes the most sense, if it's a long-term deal, if that makes the most sense, whatever it is, you've got to be able to build the team around Brock Purdy. And you said that earlier, Wink, and I think that's the most important idea for me. So I don't care if it's $45 million a year, $60 million a year. If it hampers your ability to build around Brock Purdy, then it's a deal that you probably shouldn't do. Because I do think you have to build around him quite a bit, substantially, more so than maybe some of the other elite quarterbacks. And even elite quarterbacks like Joe Burrow can't do it by himself, as we've seen, Croc, right? And Wink, like as you pointed out earlier, like you can't do it by yourself, even if you are at the elitist of the elite level. I think Brock Purdy is not quite at that level, whether he's, the one step behind, a tier and a half behind, whatever tier you want to put him in. He's not in Joe Burrow's tier. He's not in the Lamar, Mahomes, Josh Allen tier. clearly. And I think you're being disingenuous if you think he is, and we probably can't have much of a conversation about Brock Purdy in reality if that's the case. So you have to still be able to build around him. And, I think of the Myles Garrett trade potentially. If the 49ers say to themselves, man, we can't even, like, Myles Garrett picked us and we have the offer to do it, but we can't fit Myles Garrett in, then you're doing something wrong, in my opinion. So then you have to go back to the drawing board. And that's kind of where I'm at. You still have to be able to build. Now, maybe you can't build quite the super team around Brock Purdy like they had in 2023. I don't know if those days might be gone forever, but you still need to be able to operate and build around the guy. And if you have to start dropping really important pieces and not being able to add really important pieces, then I think it does potentially become a problem. So whatever that structure looks like, the 49ers need to be able to get that done.
Who's going to be the team to say, I like my quarterback, but I don't think he's in the same category as some of these other quarterbacks. I want to prioritize really, truly being able to put the best roster around this guy as possible. So I'm not gonna pay this guy an excessive amount of money, right? Like, I feel like the way the Miami Dolphins went about it, that's wrong. Because we've seen it, right? With Tua is a good quarterback. I don't think Tua is a bad quarterback. I think sometimes when I talk like this, people assume I'm talking down. Oh, you're hating on Jimmy G. You're hating on Brock. You're hating on Tua. I'm not hating on Tua. I think Tua is a good quarterback. But is he good enough to where I'm going to pay you $55 million and it might make other decisions more difficult? I don't think you're that good. But I like you. And I like you a lot more if I'm able to bring in a Myles Garrett, or I'm able to bring in these other pieces and then not to tear away from what we have. And we just talked about Joe Burrow. He's terrific. But even in games there's a few games he lost, scored 38 points, lost that game, scored 34 points, lost that game, scored 34 points again, lost that game, scored 33 points, lost that game. Hey, man, this money that you're eating up with your roster, on your contract, is hampering the defense that we're kind of being able to put around you. And he's someone who's able to kind of somewhat, but even then it's like, dang, I can't. I'm Superman, but I ain't that much Superman.
Right.
And they didn't even make the playoffs this year. He gave him a chance, though. He gave him a chance. But those losses, that was huge. And a big part of that was, man, what can we do about defense? So with the 49ers, if the Bengals are struggling to put together a competent defense around Burrow, who's throwing the ball to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and we'll see what happens with Higgins, and they've had to make other decisions, get rid of Joe Mixon, and we saw Joe Mixon have a terrific year with the Texans. When the 49ers pay Brock what the market, and I say the market, but whatever the 49ers feel like paying him, what is that going to do long term for the rest of the team? And what would that look like?
Yeah,
I but if you paid him Baker Mayfield's contract, who Baker Mayfield just threw 40 touchdowns, won the NFC South, not a great division, but similar to what the 49ers division was this past season, right? But you go to the playoffs, you're still able to build around that quarterback. He's making what, $33 million a year? That's the right number to be able to, with the cap and all that, to be able to sustain building around the guy. They'll try to make things work, but it'll be very difficult to keep a good team around Brock.
Yeah, I spoke earlier about 6 of 8 quarterbacks. It's actually 4 out of the top 5 quarterbacks are the highest paid that didn't make the playoffs, and it was Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, and Trevor Lawrence. And the 5th guy, he's actually in 3rd place there, is Jordan Love, and his team didn't fare so well in the playoffs either. So it really hampers what you can do both offensively and, like we've been talking about here during this segment, defensively as well, when you invest that much money in one guy. When you have a guy like Tua who misses half the year, Trevor Lawrence who misses the end of the season, but they have down years, it just destroys any chance of taking the team to the next level.
Diana Rossini's report, and she was on the Athletic podcast on, I believe it was on Tuesday, and she said essentially some of the similar things that Tim Kawakami's report had. And she was talking about how both sides are motivated to be talking soon, and that by her reporting that maybe Brock Purdy is not trying to reset the market, which was the idea earlier on that we had heard from, I think it was Schefter. I can't remember if it was Schefter or Ian Rappaport. And it was like, Brock Purdy wants to reset the market. He's like, well, you know where that's coming from. It's coming from the agent side. So still, like, I wonder if that's where the agents are or not. But she also talked about how San Francisco 49ers are really good with contracts, really good with structure. I know that our resident 49ers cap guy, 49erscap.com, said that it's probably going to look more like the structure for Trevor Lawrence's contract, which is a little bit different than Tua's, even though the per year numbers look very similar. So if you're interested in that, go look up what the structure is of that contract and how they did that. But Purdy has an agent that hasn't done a lot of big time deals and big time clients. So I wonder if the 49ers might be at an advantage in the negotiation. She was just kind of throwing that out there. But I can again see that going either way. Maybe it's a younger agent who's trying to build a name for himself. It's like, no, I'm not backing down. My client deserves this, and he's going to get that. So anyway, all that is to say that there is some good reports here that Brock is maybe not trying to break the bank. The Kyle Connolly report talking about maybe even a little shorter deal or something. Who knows? Maybe the two sides can get together on something that makes a lot of sense. That is, I don't want to say team friendly, but maybe team friendlier than the, $62 million per year resetting the market report that some people believe is what the contract is going to end up looking like. And potentially it gets done sooner. Now, we thought that other deals were going to get done sooner with the 49ers in past off seasons. So to be honest with you, I'll believe it when I see it. But as of right now, the latest reporting this week, I think is probably good news about where the 49ers and where Brock Purdy are. And hopefully they can get a deal done. And when we get new reports about it, we'll talk about that a little bit further. Guys, next, I want to talk about some trade options that are out there, not just Myles Garrett and who might be on the trade market from the San Francisco 49ers, because it's going to be another, I think, wild offseason with wide receiver trades and wide receiver movement. There's free agents, and Cooper Kupp is the latest name on the trade block. Could Deebo join him next? The final segment of today's episode of Locked On 49ers is presented by Prize Picks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks make it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. All you do is you pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections. And if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you're already cashing out. So also check out the promos tab. You can tail any of the super sweet Millie winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at Prize Picks. Run your game. So Cooper Kupp is the latest. Myles Garrett has requested his own trade. Cooper Kupp is out here just saying, like, I'd like to stay with the Rams, but they're going to trade me. That's essentially what Cooper Kupp said on social media. So 2 big names on the trade block. Myles Garrett, surely the San Francisco 49ers should be interested, as should many other teams around the NFL. Right now, the Browns are saying that they don't really want to trade Myles Garrett. I think that was partially what the behind the scenes were, and that's why Myles Garrett went public. And he's like, look, as I think Andrew Barry said something about the Cleveland to Canton thing, and Myles Garrett's like, I don't want to go Cleveland to Canton. I was thinking Super Bowl. I want to be in New Orleans right now. Not Canton's going to happen, whether we all like it or not, because that's the path that Myles Garrett is on. But big name player, Cooper Kupp, he is on the trade block. He's not going to be a 49er. No way they trade him to the 49ers, and the 49ers probably shouldn't be interested. In fact, the 49ers might have one extra wide receiver. Guys, what do you think about the plan? Like, the plan all along is out, as far as I was concerned, was you drafted a first-round wide receiver, and then you re-upped Brandon Ayuk. And then you still got Juwan Jennings, who was actually the best player on the team last year. So that means that Deebo Samuel, whose money is, on the larger side right now, we're talking about how the 49ers could find cap space and find room. Deebo Samuel. What do you guys think? Could he potentially be on the trade block this offseason and join potentially Tyreek Hill, who might be on the trade block? Speaking of teams that are paying their quarterbacks, and all of a sudden, second time in a row for Tyreek Hill, right? Big time quarterback contract. Well, Ty, you make the most money, so I think you got to go now. There's rumors out there that DK Metcalf could potentially be on the trade block. There's a lot of names out there. It's a free agent class of a lot of guys that were really good for your fantasy teams about 3 or 4 years ago, the Hopkins of the world and Diggs and Keenan Allen and those names. So a lot more wide receiver movement again this offseason. Will Deebo join them is the big question for me. Croc, you first. What do you think? Deebo Samuel, is he playing for somebody else? I don't think they're going to cut him, but I think he could potentially be traded.
A couple episodes ago, I talked about the 49ers needing to adopt the Bill Belichick philosophy of getting rid of a player a year too early as opposed to a year too late. Now, that year too early, because I kind of use George Kittle in this situation. Everybody's like, oh, no, he's still productive. Well, yeah, that's the point. Where he's productive, you get the most for him, and then, maybe he has one more productive year, then it kind of falls off a cliff, and it's like, okay, got out ahead of it, was able to get some compensation for it. They might be past that with Deebo Samuel. like that year too soon might have been like maybe when they had the opportunity to trade him during the draft for the 10th overall pick. Now, I agree with the 49ers to not trade Deebo because it was the Jets had the 10th overall pick, and then the 49ers first pick was pick 61. And they wanted Deebo and pick 10 for 61. Now, in hindsight, that was Drake Jackson. Pick 10 was
Garrett Wilson. Yeah.
Would you take Garrett Wilson right now, but not have Deebo and Drake Jackson? That's why sometimes the draft picks it's like, hey, if you have an opportunity to get more of an elite guy as opposed to holding on to a late second round pick, maybe take the opportunity to draft an elite guy. But again, that was maybe their only opportunity to truly get rid of I don't like that word, get rid of Deebo. To be able to part ways with Deebo Samuel and get big time compensation from it. I think we're past that part now. Right now, I mean, what he's so unique and specific to the 49ers. What would a team even give up to bring in Deebo? Are we talking a 5th round pick, 6th round pick? Are you just looking at it where, hey, this is an opportunity to get some money off the books? I mean, like, what are the benefits of the 49ers getting rid of Deebo Samuel right now?
Well, like you said, maybe it is to get some money off the books, right? Maybe it is so that you can give your franchise quarterback a huge payday because you need to clear up some space. I'm with you, Croc. I don't think he's worth much. I think he's better on our team as a second, third, fourth option going forward into the 2025 season than what we would get in return for a trade. Like you said, what, you're going to get a late round pick? Like, what's that going to really turn into realistically? Most likely those are misses, right? The 49ers have been great at nailing some of their late round picks. So maybe they're looking at it that way. Maybe they're like, okay, we can turn this into something. I don't see it happening because going forward, I think it's just like they said, we're not in the habit of trading good players, right? And I think that the 49ers will go into the season with 4 receivers that they feel comfortable with because many times throughout this season, guys were out, right? I mean, you start the season with your number 1 draft pick, it was shot and he missed some days, and then Ayuk goes down, and then Deebo goes down, and then Jennings has to step up and be this big stud. So you need a lot of wide receivers in the NFL. I don't think they should trade Deebo unless somebody comes knocking and is like, hey, we got a really good deal for you. Something high, something in the top 3 rounds. I think the 49ers might make that move.
Yeah, it'd probably be at most a third, I would guess, would be the trade market. And look, if you can fit everybody in, then you can fit everybody in. You don't have to do anything like that. And they'll maybe let it play out naturally with Deebo and a lot of their talent and a lot of their aging talent, because they, most of their best players are past the age of 27, 28 years old. And that's just the reality of where they are. Could they get some more picks to try to add some more younger talent to go along with the next generation and the expensive Brock Purdy? I don't know. We'll find out. I think it's going to be a fascinating offseason to see if it becomes a transitional year or more of a run it back type of a squad for the San Francisco 49ers here in 2025. Before you go, Wink, it's Super Bowl week. What's your prediction? Chiefs, Eagles? Most 49ers fans would prefer that they both lose somehow, but it's impossible. So who you got?
I mean, I'm just rooting for a good game, right? I just want to see another 38-35 like we saw last time these two met up. But if I got to make a pick, I'm going to go with the Eagles. I don't want to see a three-peat. I don't want to see that happen on my watch. I don't want to see that Mahomes be the first guy to do it. Although we've talked about it many times, that show quarterback made me respect Mahomes and what he does and who he is as a football player and how he prepares and everything. That's fantastic. But I don't want them to win that. But before I go, Wink's Wish Watch? Over that weekend, last weekend, it was the Wink Juice Watch. Did you guys see Juice Check out there?
All over the place. Yeah.
Competition. He is not good.
He was big time in the Pro Bowl game itself.
Yes, but punting, not so much.
It's not in his future. Well, there you go. All right, there you have it. Wishnowski's worth every penny. Could Wishnowski hit the trade market? I don't think so. I don't think you can get rid of that guy, even if you need a little bit of cap space, because you don't want
touchbacks.
You don't want to make your special teams worse than it already is if you're the San Francisco 49ers right now.
I have a question for you guys. And
yeah.
Wink, you can answer it, or Peacock. We just talked about, prediction for this game and for the Super Bowl and the Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia Eagles. But if the Philadelphia Eagles win this game, what had to happen for them to be able to do that? Because it's hard. I need your guys' professional opinions on that, because I've seen the Chiefs in every single bad situation in the postseason, whether it was being down 24-0 to the Houston Texans and just coming back. Heck, the Super Bowl with the Eagles, coming back. I thought that was a game where the Eagles had it in the bag. You talk about, the two double-digit deficits against the 49ers. They came back, and they just figure it out. And this isn't the Chiefs against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers where your entire offensive line is hurt, right? And you had some advantageous drops from receivers. I think they're better than that, especially up front right now. So how do you beat this team?
What's
Saquon Barkley?
Do they have the closer? Yeah. So I would actually start with the guys blocking for Saquon Barkley, and I keep bringing up this stat Look, Saquon Barkley is awesome, and yeah, if he has a good game, it's going to be as a result, or the result of everything else they need to do to win. So Saquon does need to have a big game, but it starts up front. They need to dominate both lines of scrimmage, and that's what they've done so far in the playoffs. They have probably the best combination of offensive defensive line right now in the league. The Eagles do, and so they have to win where they're good, and then they have to play keep away. And Saquon Barkley and the Philadelphia Eagles running game this year, they had twice as many yards before their running backs were contacted, twice as many as league average in the NFL this year. League average was just around 1,000 yards before contact for the total rushing offense, and they were almost 2,000.
That's wild.
Contact. Yeah. And that game, you remember that game where Saquon rushed for 255 yards? 213 of those were before contact in that game.
No way.
So, as awesome as Saquon is, he wouldn't be doing this for the New York Giants right now, right? He's doing it because he's on the Eagles right now, and he's also talented before he even gets the contact point. And then now you're like, okay, now we're going. So, and that's the path, right? And Fangio, we know how good of a defense coordinator Vic Fangio is. Got to have some things up his sleeve. You got to catch the ball if Patrick Mahomes throws it to you. And yeah, Saquon's got to be the closer. And remember in the 49ers, maybe threw the ball a few too many times.
Hold on to the football.
When the Chiefs couldn't stop the run, and so can the Eagles close the door if they do get that lead? And they're built in a way to be able to do that, but they've got to play keep away if they get that lead and not let the Chiefs back into it. Can they do that? I don't know. I'm probably taking the Chiefs if I'm putting my money on it, but I think I was going to say I'm going to root for the Eagles.
Eagles are the better team. Like, they have the better roster.
So
top to bottom.
But the Chiefs just find a way to win over and over and over.
They know how to win.
Yeah.
In every situation. And they're obviously the referee, that's a whole different conversation. But their situational football is as good as I've ever seen. And, as a coach, like, that's what I pay attention to, like, just those moments and how you execute in those moments. And they do it better than anyone I've ever seen.
Oh, and you know what? Like, on a key third down late in the game, block Chris Jones, maybe. Try that. See,
you think that's a good idea?
Put one guy in front of him at least, maybe even two guys. Who knows? If you want to get really crazy. All right, Wink, appreciate it. Croc and I will talk more about the Super Bowl. We'll have our predictions. We'll break down the post-Super Bowl as well, even though the 49ers are sadly not in it. Let us know if you have any questions about the 49ers, about this offseason, about trades, free agency. Of course, the NFL draft. We'll be breaking down a lot more prospects as well. So stay tuned. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.
Can't believe it.